Fantastic. Well, then we'll go ahead and get started. Once again, we want to say welcome to today's EnRoute webinar. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to spend some time with us going over different features with EnRoute. Today, Jesse will be covering how to create bridges and onion skins. And I'm excited for this. A lot of you folks know more about EnRoute than I do, so I'll be learning something new today. But Jesse knows everything there is to know about EnRoute, how that all works. So he'll show you about bridges and onion skins today. And then after that is done, we'll go ahead and open it up for a Q&A session. So if you do have any questions, either about today's topic or about any other functions or questions you have about EnRoute, you can just go ahead and type those into the chat window in the bottom there, and we'll answer as many of those as we can today. And one more thing before we begin, we will be recording this webinar. So if you have to step out or you want to show it to an employee or a colleague, we'll be sending you a link to our YouTube channel where we will post the recording. So you can review it anytime you like. And with that, we'll turn it all over to Jesse.
All right. Thank you, Stuart. Like Stuart said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to cover onion skinning and bridging. Inside EnRoute, there are a few other things as far as naming conventions go that are slightly different than the normal. For instance, we don't call it onion skinning, we call it final pass. And with bridges, we're gonna go ahead and we do call them a bridge. However, the industry standard term is typically a tab. But it's the same thing, and there's a couple different ways that you can go about them and different ones that you can use depending on which way you want to hold down your parts. Hey, however, before we get started with that, I always like to kind of go over the define plate just a little bit because it's very important, especially when it comes into tabbing and bridging a part. For instance, if I am surfacing that top of the plate and I'm working down to my spoil board, your thickness does become really important because we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut all the way down to the bottom, and our bridges and our tabs, we're going to start from the bottom of the toolpath. So if I tell it it's 0.75 material, but it's actually thinner than that, what could potentially happen is that my bridge or my onion skin will actually be below my material, and then it'll essentially, there will be no point of putting a bridge or tab on there. So if you are using top of the plate, we do recommend that you mic out your material either with a caliper or get it close. However, my recommendation is generally do surface at bottom of the plate or top of your spoil board. Is that way you know exactly where it is, and if I put in 1/4 inch material, but I tell it to cut 0.24, you're going to have a 0.01 onion skin consistently throughout the whole part. And consistency is a big thing with onion skinning and bridging, just because generally you want as little material holding on as possible. That way you can either just break it off or take an X-Acto knife and cut that out. With surface at bottom, you are going to have more of a consistency because you are not relying on the material variance like you are with top of the plate. However, you can do them both ways. For instance, like I explained with top of the plate, you do want to tend to mic your material though. So if you don't want to go through that process, bottom of the plate, and depending on what machine you have, you may have to choose one or the other. Some of them have the benefit of choosing both. However, I tend to rely a little bit more on bottom of the plate just for that consistency factor because I don't want to break through and break that vacuum seal. So for this example, we're going to go ahead and we're going to work from bottom of the plate, and we're going to work with 1/4 inch material on this example. Once you click OK, I'm going to go ahead and put some parts on screen. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to use the widget menu for that. We're going to use just a fleur-de-lis example. Okay, now when I come in here, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start with our bridges, and then we're going to go into onion skinning. Okay, so for my bridge, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my routing offset. I'm going to pick my tool. So for this one, we're going to go ahead and use a 3/16 upcut. I'm going to give it a depth of 0.26 because we are cutting 1/4 inch material. However, the common thing is to over depth it just like this. However, you have to remember that when you put a bridge inside here, it is going from the bottom of the toolpath. So EnRoute does not recommend line to your machine. However, if you do lie to it in the depth, you do have to lie to it down here as well. So for instance, my length is fine. I'm going to go ahead and say 1/2 inch. However, my height, I do have to overcome that 0.01. Essentially, I'm telling it is deeper than that material. So I'm going to go ahead and say 0.04. So that way I have a 0.03 bridge. Inside here, you also have your number. So if I want to go 2, 4, 6, however many I choose to, I can also do by distance. So for every 3 inches, go ahead and put a tab. Or I can manually place them on there as well. For this first example, we're going to go ahead and just put 2. And then you have a few different ones inside here. You have lift, ramp, smooth, ramp mesa, smooth mesa. And all these are going to be slightly different. And I'm going to show you a visual on screen after we apply it, kind of what they do and how they operate. So on this one, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to choose lift. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in some feeds and speeds in here. So I'm just going to use 300. Okay, so now that I have that on there, the green little dot's going to be my entry and exit. And then these green little brackets are going to be my tab. So right here, it's on the outside of this handle here, but it's on the inside over here. I probably don't want it on the inside over here. I'd want it to actually hold on to the sheet. So I'd probably want it on the outside over here. However, if I press F9 on my keyboard, it will toggle the width of the toolpath so I can kind of see how it's interacting. Sometimes it's also easier to find where those bridges are just because it highlights in a different color. So inside here, I can say, okay, well, this one, I would say that is okay, but I probably don't want this one over here. And with that, just like if we were editing the entry and exit point, we can highlight the part either by clicking it, or we can press Control A because it's the only thing on here. And I'm going to go to Toolpath, and I'm going to edit my bridge. Now, I can just click and drag wherever I want. I can also right-click on the bridge itself, and I can insert another one, or I can edit the bridge and say, okay, well, here I actually need this one at 1 inch. And the benefit of that is now this bridge becomes bigger and this one stays the same. This is still a 1/2 inch. Now this is 1 inch. So if there's different places I need to do different sizes, I kind of use the 80-20 rule. So when I'm setting up my parameters the first time, I will do it for the majority of the work, and then I can come back and I can just edit them simply by right-clicking in that bridge. After going to edit bridges, then I can just say, okay, well, I want to edit this one. Okay, so maybe I want this one the same, maybe I want it bigger, maybe I want this one 3 inches. Okay, you also have this option down here that is apply to all bridges in the selection. So that way you can overwrite all of them at once if you think that you need to modify all of them. Okay, so now you can see that now this bridge goes from here to here, and this is still our 1 inch. Okay. Every time I apply a bridge, I tend to go into the 4-pane view and then my front view. So that way I can take a look, and what I want to see is I really want to see this spot here, because I want to see that it's actually holding on to the material. The bottom of the material is this little red line, and I want to make sure that that part is still being held in the material. If my bridge is below the surface, then I technically don't have a bridge. I'm going to be cutting all the way out. So I just want to double check and make sure everything is the way that it should be. So here's our big 3 inch. And then here, this is our 1 inch tab. Okay. Now, as far as our different types of tabs, you can also find them inside the help contents, which I'm a big fan of. If I come in here and say that this is a bridge,
And Jesse, while you're pulling that up, just wanted to let you know that several viewers have commented that they can't see your mouse move.
okay.
So just to be aware of that as you're browsing through menus, just let them know where you where you're going, maybe take it a little slower just so we can keep up since we
Okay.
can't see the mouse.
Okay. So through this menu, the help menu, if you go to help and then help contents, I just typed in the word bridge. And then inside here, these are going to essentially just show you pictures of which menu option that you can pick. So lift, that's the square tab that we just applied on screen. Ramp is going to give you almost that pyramid look. Smooth is actually going to be the easiest one on the machine because it will be almost that semicircle. And then you also have ramp mesa and smooth mesa. So this one's going to have a little bit more meat on the material, ramp and smooth mesa. However, the most common that's used is generally the lift. Okay, but you're more than welcome to use one or a variety of these if you choose to. The default is lift. However, you can change that and then save it to your strategy if you choose to. Okay, inside here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select my part, and then I'm going to go back into the toolpath menu, and I'm going to go back into my edit bridges. Okay, inside here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this bridge. So once you're in the edit bridge menu, you can right click inside of another bridge and you can delete them out if you choose to. Maybe it's holding down too much material or it's just not necessary. Part's not moving as much as I thought. I can go back and I can get rid of them if I choose to. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna delete this, and now we're gonna kind of move over into the onion skinning. Okay, so with onion skinning, there's a couple different ways that you can go about doing it. You can use it to where you will come back and you will actually cut out the part itself after leaving that thin film, or you can just leave that thin film and either take a knife blade or just break the part off, depending on how you want to do it. So the first example we're going to do is we're going to leave the part in the material and not actually cut it out. So for that, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the routing offset. And for this, remember we are at bottom of the plate. So I'm going to do 0.245. So that way I have a 0.005 thin film. So it's virtually nothing on here. Okay, inside here, I'm going to uncheck bridges because I don't want them on there. I'm going to go into my edit menu. Okay, I'm going to put in my feeds and speeds, and if I need to add another pass, I can. For instance, on here, 3/16 at a quarter of an inch, I'm probably going to say that that one's okay unless I have a really short stub nose tool. Then I may have to do 2 passes. Okay? But for this example, we're actually not going to use the final pass. We're just going to use the depth of cut in order to create that onion skin. Okay? If I am checking final pass here, that means I do want to come back and cut out the part completely using the machine. So if I don't, I will not check this box and I will toolpath it as I normally would with a routing offset. And now when we click OK and apply, we take a look at it in the front view, we just have this really thin film that's holding on the part. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a rectangle so I can simulate this in 3D, just so you can see that it is still being held down by the material itself. Okay, so I can't see through it yet, which just means that it is still being held by that material. Okay, if I were to cut all the way through in EnRoute 6, you would see this gradient background through the part. Okay, I'm just going to press F12 to quickly go back to my top view. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back and I'm actually going to let the machine cut it out. So if I want to use an onion skin and then have it come back and cut out, I'm going to probably do the same thing. So my, let's say 0.26, I am cutting it all the way out. I want to go a little bit into that spoil board. However, just like with the bridges or tabs, I actually have to over depth it because I've lied to it in the actual depth of cut in order to get that clean cut all the way through. So for this, I would say that I do want to do a final pass. And as soon as I check this, it automatically goes to number of passes to 2. So the first one, which is going to be your actual per pass right here, this is going to change once I put in a value for final pass. So for my final pass, I want 0.035. Okay, so automatically EnRoute says, okay, for your actual per pass, you actually need to take out 0.225, and then that will leave you at 0.035 that you're going to come back and clean out. Okay. One of the big things that we see from time to time is if you check final pass here, you got to come back down here and you do have to put in a feed rate for your final pass, because depending on your material, how good the vacuum hold down is, I may run faster, I may run the same speed, or I may actually run slower so the part doesn't kick. So inside here, depending on what you're doing, I may, like I said, run faster, slower, or the same. For this one, I'm actually going to run about the same, because this part itself is about 16 by 21. That's a fairly decent part. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say okay. Okay. So our toolpath doesn't look any different because we're using the same tool. So your same offset is there. However, once again, if I come back in here to the front view, I can now see that the first pass is going to take out the majority of the material. And then my second pass, which is my onion skin, is just going to come back and it's going to cut out that thin little film. Okay. Now, once again, just like we did with the last one, I'm going to draw just a simple little rectangle, and we're going to simulate this and see how it's going to look. Okay, I'm going to do it by tool lift. Okay, so here's my first pass. It's not broke through that material yet. My second pass breaks all the way through the material, and I would get a nice clean cut all the way around my part. And like I said, this would be the way that you would actually use the machine to cut out the part. If I'm using a razor blade or a knife blade, I would just do the regular depth and do not check final pass. But it really depends on what I'm doing, and especially how big that part is. If I'm doing a part that's generally under 2 inches, generally I leave the film on it and then just do some trimming afterwards. Okay. There's one other thing that kind of works with bridges and onion skinning as well, and that is if you're using the automatic toolpath function in EnRoute. And I just really quickly want to go over the preference setting that you can actually use for that. For instance, with automatic toolpathing, you can nest many items, toolpath them, order them, and send them out to the machine. However, if I have a lot of big parts and some smaller ones, I may want a different type of strategy to cut out for smaller items, and that is actually found in the preference menu. So I'm just going to view and view setup, or I can press F10, and inside my initialization tab, it's your small size threshold. So inside here, I can tell it what I consider a small part. That way I can provide a different strategy inside the automatic toolpathing menu. If you're not using the ATP menu, it's a little different. For instance, I could go in here and I could say that I want to process these first, second, or third, depending on how I want to do the small parts. But inside here, generally I do about 50 square inches. Say okay. And that's really where you're going to set that up. And like I said, it plays a bigger role in ATP than it does in regular processing, but it is also something nice just to know where it's at inside of EnRoute. Okay. And then on the bridges that we covered first, I forgot to show you how to do the manual one. It is very much just like the drills. However, if I come into my routing offset, I'm going to take this final pass off. Okay, and I'm going to go back to my bridges. So inside here, all I'm going to do is I'm going to click this manual here and click OK. And then you can see my mouse turns into the bridge icon, and then I can just click and place these bridges wherever I choose. Okay. And then once I'm done, I can just right click in white space, exit this tool, and now I have my part with multiple bridges on it as well. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to double check it here. Okay, my parts are inside, which are good. And if I highlight this and view it in 3D, okay, I can see that it is cut out in the majority of the areas except for where we have those bridges, and you see just those little bitty tabs inside here as well. And that is how EnRoute uses bridges and onion skinning as well. So multiple different ways you can use it depending on how you want to hold down your parts. A couple different ways to use it. For instance, your manual way, the automatic, you have a couple different types of bridges that you can utilize on your machine as well. And then with the onion skinning, you can either let the machine cut out the part itself, or you can just under depth it just a little bit, and you can actually let the material hold down and then cut it out with a knife or a blade, or just push it out as well.
Okay, Jesse, thank you very much. So we'll go ahead and open it up for some questions. So if you do have any questions about bridging or onion skinning, go ahead and type those in the comment window there, or anything else. If you have any other questions about EnRoute, Jesse knows all the answers. We do have one just a little quick on the beginning here. James said, can you explain how you were toggling between the 4-screen and the 1-screen view?
Yeah, so with the 4-screen, if I double click on the word top in the top left-hand corner that highlights blue, that's going to toggle all 4 views.
Sorry, where are you clicking? We can't see the mouse. So
top left-hand side of the screen, where it says top, and it's white letters with blue background.
Okay.
So it is.
Okay. I see it there. Ah, very clever.
Okay. So if I double click on that, then there's a word in each one of those screens. If I double click on another one of those words, it will cascade that window open. Okay. So that way now it's the full screen in that view.
Okay, thank you. All right. Torben said it came late to the session, but can you have bridges and final pass in the same path?
Technically, you can. However, it generally doesn't work out the same way that that you would want it to, because what's going to happen is you could put those bridges in, but when it comes in for that final pass, it's going to destroy those bridges. So there may be an instance that you want to use both, but generally, 9 times out of 10, it's one or the other. With the bridges, I have less material to cut away or sand off, so secondhand fabrication. And And then with onion skinning, I can either let the machine cut it completely out and either go slower if I don't want the part to kick as much, or if it's a little bit bigger, I can do faster. But it really just depends on the setup. But 9 times out of 10, you use one or the other.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I think you covered it pretty thoroughly. But if anyone has any additional questions, go ahead and type those in there, or otherwise we'll go ahead and wrap up for today. And Jesse, do we know the topic of next month's webinar?
I do not. I will research it and I will come up with a list of different ones.
Okay. So if you folks do have any questions or suggestions for topics for upcoming webinars, go ahead and either type it in or send us an email. Let us know. We want to make sure that these are useful for you. So let us know if there are any topics that you'd like us to cover in a webinar. And can we get a copy of this video sent to us? Yes, we will be posting it on the SAI YouTube channel, and we will email everyone a link so that you can view the recording anytime you like. And Ulysses said, I have always used the top of the substrate to determine thickness of the part. When using the bottom, do you still use the same dimension, or is it reversed?
So you would still toolpath it the same way. It's just where your machine is calculating Z0 from. So if I'm cutting 1/4 inch material, I would still put in the same depths at whether I was doing surface at top or bottom. The only difference is where your Z is located, either on top of your spoil board or on top of your material. Like I said, sometimes you have a choice at where you want to set it, and some machines you do not have a choice. So depending on which model, you may have a choice and you may not.
Okay. Is that okay? Thanks.
All right, you're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you everyone for attending today. We'll send out an email, let you know the date and subject of next month's webinar, and we hope to see you then.
All right. Thank you, everyone.